wasn't, but I was afraid it was somebody trying to get on. How is our time?
5:30.
5:30. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And first item is on our agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Did anyone see any corrections or questions or anything?
I have a correction.
Okay.
And that, let me see if I can pull my copy up. So at the end, under,
Open Space Committee.
yes, under open space, it says, wait, I'm looking at my copy right now. Wait 1 second. Open space, Ms. Palmer briefly discussed the proposal for the acquisition of Durrell's Path. Well, that is not correct. It should say the acquisition of map 12, lot 10, next to Durrell's Path, which is now known as Great Mountain Trail. I don't know if that's official, but that's what I'm being told of late, that it's no longer called Durrell's Path.
Was it known as Great Mountain Trail at our meeting on the 26th?
What?
Was it known as Great Mountain Trail on the 26th at our meeting?
It has been Great Mountain Trail since, it's been a couple months, I think, since the Concom has voted on.
Told me to refer to it by the lot number. Okay.
But it isn't Durrell's Path or Great Mountain Trail that we're requesting acquisition of. It's the lot next to it, which is map 12, lot 10.
Okay.
Map 12, lot 10.
Correct. 40 acres.
Which is now known as Great Mountain Trail. Okay, I'll fix that.
No, don't put in that Great Mountain Trail. Just put map 12, if I've got this right, lot 10.
Well, it's next to Great Mountain Trail, Virginia.
Okay, next to, okay, make sure that that's in.
Thanks.
Let me read this. Acquisition of map 12, lot 10, next to Durrell's Path, which is now known as Great Mountain Trail. Cindy, is that right?
Yeah, it works for me. That works for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Any other corrections that anyone saw? Okay.
Move to accept the minutes as amended.
A second?
I second.
And those in favor?
Palmer, yes.
Aye.
Goes by.
Brown eye.
Kuzinski, aye.
Others? Anyone else? Any negative? Any abstentions? Okay, the corrections. The minutes are approved. Now, I'd like to go right to our first item, which is the old business. And finishing, we need to finish up our discussion and make a decision on the park grant. Now, does anyone have any any additional questions? I think I saw Dan here.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Anyone got any questions or comments or any need for something clarified or anything from his information?
I hope you all were able to receive a copy of the, we obviously appreciated all the great feedback you gave us last time, and we spent the month kind of doing a lot of research, gathering a lot of information, going back to the site specific, the company that designs splash pads, and refining that design based on some of your comments, which are all great feedback. So with that, I tried to distill all of your questions down and make sure that we had a specific answer for each one of your questions.
That was very thorough, I thought. Is there anyone that wants to make a comment, ask another question? Any details on that?
Yeah, Dan, this is Rini. I found your handout to be really helpful. So thank you for putting that together. I want to let you know that we had a guest come to the select board meeting last time, and it was somebody that was only there because of a telephone poll hearing. And he ended up staying for a bit of the meeting and said that his father or a relative was on the DPW in Easthampton. And he said, nobody even goes to that park. I don't know if you heard about that.
I have very contradictory information because I've talked directly to the Parks Commission of Easthampton. I've reached out to them, the man who is running that splash pad, and he talked to me. He sent me information about who they use for their vendors and how much water they go through in a year. Their splash pad is designed and has a much higher flow rate. So them using over 1 million gallons of water a year based on a system that is actuated by the press of a button doesn't match up with someone saying that people do not use it because where's the water going, right?
Yeah.
So
just want to make sure, like, that was one thing that came out. This was something that was supported by the master plan, right? And the open space.
That's where the root of this and the driving force behind including a splash pad was twofold. One was, like in the open space and recreation plan, the number one reason people left Southampton to go to other towns was for splash pads. You can correct me if I'm using the wrong word, Cindy, but it was something along those lines. So that led us to say, okay, splash pads would be good. The second part was the park grant request itself. The people who review the grants give higher points to grants that included cooling stations, and a splash pad is considered a cooling station because they're concerned with climate change and how people can cool themselves in the warm summer months. So this is an option for people to achieve this. I had a chance. I visited a number of splash pads over the past month or so. I went up to the one in North Adams, and it's amazing. Theirs is much bigger than the one we're proposing, and it's become a center for the community. I noticed that I went to a birthday party there because now all the families in town just have their birthday parties right at the splash pad because it's free to the town residents, and they use the pavilion that's right next to it, and it's the place to be. So that was just my note as to from one of all the splash pads I visited, but it's kind of not here nor there.
Can I ask
Maureen, were you through? Oh, go ahead.
I just have one other question, Dan, and that is, when I read through your questions and answer piece, has it been decided where it's going to be? Because I felt like in the handout that you gave that it wasn't decided where it's going to be yet.
Right. So they give you basically 6 months. It says a year, but some of those months have already been eaten up for the planning phase. And during the planning phase, we would decide where it would go. I know that Bob brought up the point that he feels like around the pavilion, and it's starting to get a little crowded in that area. So perhaps there's better locations for it. Obviously, water and electricity are a concern. It needs to be located in a park that has a bathroom. That is a requirement. So Conant Park would meet that need, but it is not finalized. And what we're really asking is to let us get to that point with a CPC grant where we can get those engineers involved and those planners involved to get those details figured out, so that we know more about where it's going to go, the real details of it, because that's what would be the next phase.
All right, thank you.
Maureen, if you're through, this is Bob Kozub. Thank you, Dan, for doing all that work and presenting what came through to us today. And that's great work. And it did answer some questions on my part. But I have to say that I have very, very serious reservations about going ahead and approving this to move it on to the next phase, because there are still, in my opinion, not enough questions answered that satisfy me. I'm still very concerned about cost of maintenance, who's going to maintain it. I will interject that, and without getting into specifics, that there are many unattended to maintenance problems in the town that have not been funded either dollar-wise or manpower-wise that bother me. The other thing that bothers me is liability, and I understand you have addressed that in your answer to us, but I'm not fully satisfied with that. I don't know, for example, whether we're going to need an attendant here. The safety issue, anybody can drown in a bathtub. And the safety issue concerns me with regard to this. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned up until now is that as far as I can remember, for the last 3 or 4 summers, the town of Southampton, along with other towns, have been under water restrictions. And I would presume that in the future, we're about to see more of those. So those are 3 things that I'm not totally satisfied about. The fact that you have not decided where this facility might be put still bothers me. The idea of putting it near the pavilion, which is pretty sound. I mean, I'm not saying that it is not a sound idea, but it does infringe on open space there, which has been, frankly, other than for athletic purposes, that pavilion has been used by more people than perhaps athletic facilities. We're talking 200 to 300 people at a concert 6 to 7 times a year, summer. Lions barbecues, which are 200 to 300 people. Celebrate Southampton, again, that same number. I'm very concerned about filling in that open space with what I call toys. So your answers are fine, but frankly, they, in my opinion, are not deep enough to allow to. If we go ahead and approve this, put our stamp of approval on this, it goes on to town meeting, and town meeting could or could not approve this, and then we're off and running, and whatever may be. And that bothers me.
So would you give me a chance to respond to your questions?
Certainly, please do.
Oh, okay. So I think I'll start in reverse order. The location. I actually think that it's a plus having it close to the pavilion. If I look at that area between the pickleball courts and that playground, which may be considered a prime candidate for the location of it, it would, I would say, increase the usage of that pavilion. You talked about how many people use that pavilion. While they're there, they may want to cool themselves down. They may want to bring their families. Now this gives them more options and incorporates it with something, a town feature, the pavilion, that is heavily utilized. So it gives more capability to that piece of land for different age groups and family structures. Water restriction. So we would operate the same way Easthampton does with their splash pad. So if they are called for a water ban and they have to turn off their splash pad, we would fall in suit and turn off our splash pad. So it would be the same way for us, because we share water with them and we'll coordinate accordingly. Liability. I have not seen an attendant at a non-recirculating large, meaning like the water parks I've seen, like Six Flags, a lifeguard. These are not required. These size splash pads, I have not seen a lifeguard required for any of these locations, and I doubt there would be one required for this. And then cost. The most interesting thing about the design is we took into consideration the recurrent cost. We did a lot to reduce the recurring costs of this in both its water usage as well as its design. A non-recirculating system, there's much less parts. A recirculating system, you have more. You have tanks, you have storage, you have lines, you have pumps. With this, basically, you have valves, you have one control circuit that controls the timing of the thing in relation to the button presses and the times of day the thing can operate. So it is the least. I should say it the other way. Has the highest reliability in comparison to a recirculating system. So I think that that allows us to reduce the cost of such a system. So I think I addressed all of your questions.
Hey Dan, this is Megan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So regarding like the lifeguard and the safety thing, I was under the impression that this was a typical splash pad,
Yep.
which is essentially just like a concrete pad
Yep.
with
20 by 20 or less.
like a grating that goes to like a drainage. So there wouldn't be any sort of puddling or any sort of buildup for water. The, standard slips, trips, and falls would be your big,
Yes.
which is, anywhere you walk at all.
True.
So, okay.
Wet grass could cause the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I speak? Or Mark Reed, here with Dan, chairman of the Park Commission. So Bob, we have talked about a lot of these concerns. We all have the same concerns that need to be worked out through the next phase of the project in design. We all feel that the state is going to give us $100,000, of which, if we don't move forward, we're really buying something at 50 cents on a dollar. To be able to move forward with a project that maybe won't happen, that, there is a good possibility that it can't all work out the way we hope it can, but we feel that it's worth pursuing so that we can at least demonstrate to the best of all our abilities that we've done our best to not just take this grant and discard it off the table. Yes, it may be a modification to location, design. We talked about the hours of operation to funnel down the amount of water that we are using, because we all realize that we can't use 100,000 gallons of water and pay the water department for that use. At our Park Commission meeting last week, we had a member of the water commissioners there at the meeting discussing all these issues that need to get resolved. But if the CPC doesn't support it and the town doesn't support it, then it doesn't go anywhere. And we just feel that it's a project that is worthwhile trying to pursue. We realize that there's a lot to be done. The state is the state has set a really short time frame for doing all of this work, giving 6 months to complete the design phase. That's a really, really tight time frame to be able to come up with all the answers and make sure that it works for the town of Southampton. But we're hopeful that we can gain the support to move forward, and maybe something will happen, whether it's at Conant Park or not. Unfortunately, right now, Conant Park is the only facility that has a bathroom, and that's definitely a requirement for a splash pad. And you're right, it doesn't contain water or hold water. It's all tapered down towards a drain in the middle, and it drains off. So there is it's not a pond or a puddle or concern for anyone potentially drowning.
I appreciate that. What you're saying here. Number one, I find it very difficult to swallow the fact that we can be held hostage by the state, by a state grant here. The fact that Conant Park, the only place that currently has bathrooms, which incidentally, when we talk about repair, are disgusting and have been disgusting for over 2 years now. We can't even afford to put some money into those bathrooms, and we're talking about this project. I mean, I don't want to sound contrarian here, but I do want to sound realistic.
Can I comment one thing on? I hear what you're saying, Bob. And one of the last comments that the state representative of this grant mentioned to us was that it may be a good idea for the Parks Commission to put together a parks master plan to come up and prioritize the projects that we pursue over the next, well, I don't know, decade or whatever, and put them in priority order. So that's actually under the general questions. One of my responses is, you know, we look at the state of things in the different parks around town, and maybe there's different areas. This is a side topic, but I think it's worthwhile to come up with that master plan.
Hi, this is Janet Brown. I'm just talking about location. I know there used to be a little playground way at the back end when my son was little, and I've heard recently that that's not functional anymore. Is that a place that we could look at for this splash pad? Is it too far away from water or what?
Oh, we have talked about not putting it next to the pavilion, but also putting it on the Clark Street side of the pond and wetlands. And that's a possibility. The only thing is it would be a further distance from the facility to the bathrooms. But we, you know.
Okay.
We got to figure that out.
These are all kinds of things that are very excellent questions and everything. Right now, if we were to say no, that would be the end of all of this. If we say yes, and it passes a town meeting, and it just doesn't work out, we haven't lost a cent. That's all I'm saying.
Can I ask a question here at this point? Thank you. So I just want to clarify, maybe with Mark and Dan and others who represented the grant committee on this, is the splash pad required for us to get the 100,000? Or alternatively, if during the planning phase, which you said is the clock has already started running on, you only have the 6 months for the planning phase. If in fact the planning doesn't reveal a good plan for the splash pad, does that mean we lose the whole grant? Can somebody answer that for me, please?
To my understanding, yes. If we lose that component, the state is going to look to remove the total grant.
Well, that says the state is pushing splash pads. Is that right, Mark?
Well, it's all
100%.
Yeah, it's all part of the resilient climate control and trying to provide areas for cooling stations. You know, during the summer heat time. Yes, they want to see splash pads. Yes, you're right, Bob. That's what they would like. But at our meeting, and Ed can speak to this, but I believe that it would not be looked favorable on. Right, Ed?
Well, I wouldn't say it wouldn't be looked favorable on. However, the splash pad is a large component of the scoring that we received for receiving the grant. So if we remove the splash pad, our score is going to drop, and then yes, we will not be eligible for this grant. We did go over that in the introductory meeting with the state on this.
So, and my comment too is that, you know, we can think of negatives related to the splash pad or water parks or whatever you call it, but we have to realize there is a really significant fact that we're moving towards significant climate change in our world, and that it's not just Southampton that needs to be thinking of things, but Southampton is one of the towns in Massachusetts that needs to be responsible for the vulnerability that we're at for increased temperatures in our summertime. And this is the answer. I don't know that I feel being held hostage to that the state is holding us hostage to this. I think that state is supporting bringing us up to standards. That's how I view it. And I really like to see a positive vote by CPC to support this. There are so many factors on this. I think this is a marvelous opportunity to see some improvements at Conan Park and to increase the value of that whole space for our town.
So it's not only the splash pad, Bob and everyone, it's also the trails, the handicap trail system that right now the park doesn't comply with ADA standards. So this part of this grant is for a trail system that would provide paths that would be ADA compliant. You know, one of the next projects on our to-do list is to really look at upgrading all the playground equipment, because none of the playground equipment is ADA compliant in the park. And so that's a big undertaking. And a lot of that play equipment that's out there is probably 50 or more years old.
Yeah.
So that's another component to a positive to the project, is to provide at least some ADA path connection to the park and its uses on the property. So it's not only just a splash pad, the whole grant, it's two components. One is the splash pad or a component similar to that, and ADA path. Construction.
If I may weigh in a little bit on the scientific backing on it, I am an environmental scientist, and as we see climate change moving forward, one of the major factors is actually not just the increased temperatures, but the increased heat and humidity, which we all saw this summer. As I don't know about you guys, but I was suffering all summer long.
Yeah.
And so creating spaces where not just the public can access a cooling area, but more underserved communities can access it. And also the combination of an ADA compliant walkway, that kind of hits two factors. That allows folks who may be having a little bit of trouble walking and entering the park, maybe enter it a little bit easier. And it also allows people access to these types of services. And that kind of hits two social justice factors, like right on the head: the environmental justice and accessibility for everyone. And so in my mind, especially that they're both included in this, that seems really important and something that we should be considering moving forward in our town.
Are there any other comments or questions or?
This is Janet. I just thought, is this open to anybody? Holyoke, people from Springfield, people from Easthampton?
Just as the Conan Park is open now to people from anywhere, really. Yeah.
I just a question I had. Okay, thank you.
I will say that I've usually watching the news when it's extremely hot or anything, the bigger cities have parks with either sprinkler systems or splash pads. They wouldn't need to come here. We might need to go there. I mean, that's just my observation, but you see that all the time. And I
Can't bring that up here.
does anyone else have anything they want to bring up or any other question?
I have a question. I guess in some level, I do have some of the same concerns that Bob has. First of all, there won't be any trees that'll be removed for this project, correct? That would be sort of ironic if that was the case. So there would
No trees.
There's no plan on that.
Nope.
And the other thing I was just wondering about is, do you find that this is something that's used widely by lots of different sectors of a community, or is it primarily for young children? Just wondering do you find that splash pads that you've visited or know of do attract seniors, especially on a handicapped or accessible walk? Is that something that's used pretty widely in a community?
I mean, I've used them. I don't know.
You're using them with your children, or
with my family, I've gone to them and run through them with the.
I'm just curious. I mean, it's not that I don't support it unless there's a wide range. I'm just worried about the crowdedness also of that particular part of the park. And there's no water and electricity on the opposite side of the bridge, I don't believe, is there?
There is water across on the other side of the bridge off of Clark Street.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the ability of connecting to a water main. We have a water service coming in the other side at the baseball diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you have any concerns, Mark? I think it's a great idea to do sort of a 10-year plan. This is the first I've actually heard that there's a problem with the bathrooms. I don't tend to use them, so I didn't even know that is even an issue, but that's a problem. You know, do you have any concerns about competing projects? You know, like Labrie Field cost a lot of money. There's still work to be done. We heard about another open space request. Do you have any concerns about competing? I mean, the fact that there's $100,000 already on the table, I think is plus. We certainly didn't have that when we went for Clearwater Woodland. We had to go to town meeting saying this much if we get the grant, this much if we don't get the grant. So the grant's already obtained, so that's a plus. But do you have any concerns about the competing projects within the park system?
well, yes, in some fashion. As you know, we are trying to finalize Labrie Field. And when we went out to bid for the construction of the septic system and the field house and the play area there, the bids came back pre-COVID at $100,000 over the budget that was allotted by the town and CPC for the project. So we are trying to develop ways to move that forward, but probably not to the extent of what we had hoped to gain out of it. One component is that, just thinking outside the box now, that maybe through the joint effort of the Labrie Field funds that are out there, the bathrooms could be constructed with a septic system on Labrie Field, and the splash pad could be constructed over there. So that's one consideration. We do have water over on Labrie Field. We have power over at Labrie Field. So there's two components to it that may lend itself to, looking at that. So that's why I was mentioning that we've got a lot to do to figure out, it works at Conant Park, or there's no way it's going to work at Conant Park. That Labrie Field may be the best place for it. Those are the only two fields that are parks that we have that would support anything like that.
And would the grant support the idea of it being in two different locations, the accessible walk plus the splash pad being elsewhere?
We'd have to talk to them about that, but
no.
I don't see why it couldn't. Labrie Field is currently accessible, depending, making sure that we put it in the right spot, but it's accessible for handicap access. And that we could still potentially do the trails at Conant Park. And hopefully they'd be receptive to that.
Virginia, question. Has Public Works weighed in any further on this? I know he's not here tonight, but has he weighed in any further since Dan sent out answers to some of these questions?
The only thing I can safely say, because I have talked with Randall some about this, is that, and it's not just Labrie Field, it's not just this project, is that he feels that we need to take a really good look at how we fund the upkeep of the items we have, the places we have, and we all know that. It's not just, I think he was really saying it's not just one place, it's that all of them need care, and that asking the road crew really to do a lot of that work takes them away from doing, and then people are complaining about their roads. So that budgetarily, I felt that Randall was saying that we really need to look at putting more money into the places that we want taken care of, whether it's a road or a park or a field.
Sure.
And that was, you know, he didn't say yes or no on this. Maybe because I was standing by the road talking to him and traffic was picking up. No. And so he kind of cut it short. And but that was, I think, his biggest feeling was that we've got things and we know if we don't take care of them, they get bad and then they get to a tipping point. But it was overall, I was feeling more than any one project. I know he had concerns. A lot of the questions that Dan worked with were his. So, you know, when he gave us the rundown at the beginning, those came from Randall. And I don't have any idea if he, you know, would accept, you know, the answers to it. He had the answers to it. So I don't know more than that. But I do think, and I usually don't say what my preference is. I do think we need to move forward. If we have to back out, it's not costing us a cent. And I think overall, I think doing something like this, and before you kind of feel that, well, a splash pad is only used by little kids who jump in it, it cools the air around it. And older people can sit near it and be cooled. So anyway, that's.
Can I call the question?
I don't understand when you say, if we commit to it, we can always back out of it.
Yes,
I don't know where you're coming from there.
I'm coming from the fact that if it does not work out design way, we have committed no money to it. Ed, can you help me? Are you there?
I'm here. I mean, there may be some costs that we'd incur because, you know, if we hired a designer to do this and through the design phase we found, I don't know, there's inadequate water supply or we couldn't drain the thing so it's not going to work. Yes, we could say, okay, we can't move forward with this with the splash pad and it's, you know, we'll have to give the grant back to the state. At that point, you know, if we had committed, and I think in the budget, we're stuck with not spending more than $10,000 on design, we might incur that $10,000 design fee to get to that point of saying that this doesn't work.
Okay.
But on the flip side, you know, theoretically, you know, hopefully it does work out, and you know, they do have a location in Conant Park that it does work, and we move forward, and you know, but basically we end up with getting a new pathway and a splash pad for about half the cost that it normally would cost a community with, you know, by utilizing that state grant.
So would it be possible to move forward with the stipulation that the splash pad be designed first and the feasibility of the project itself be considered prior to, you know, the development of the path or whatnot, so that the design costs can be reduced in the event that we do have to return the grant?
You could probably do that and say that, you know, here's what we want for a design. It's the splash pad and the path, but you know, we want the splash pad, you know, designed and looked at first to make sure that it will work where we think it'll work, and that, you know, we are able to supply it with water and are able to drain it to the way it should be.
Are there other questions? I heard a call to call the question, so that takes precedent. Do I hear a motion then?
I'll make a motion. I move.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move that CPC support the $100,000 request to match to this park grant to proceed forward first with the design, start with the splash pad, and then proceed based on what information comes out of that.
And the amount that we need to put in there, and this is where I know some people are going to say, ooh, wait, is, where is that? I don't know. Oh, it's 86,000. And I thought I had it right here.
In last time's minutes.
Is it in the minutes? I don't think so.
$86,500.
Yeah, $86,500.
Well, then I'll amend my motion to say I move that CPC agrees to $86,500 to proceed with the park grant requirement, next being the design phase, beginning with the splash pad.
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion? I think you need to identify yourself as you vote.
Sorry, this is Megan, and I'll second.
Okay. Well, okay. Now, those in favor.
Palmer, in favor, yes.
Kwasinski, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Broden, aye.
Brown eye.
Joseph, no.
Other ones? Ahart, aye. Did it pass? Any abstentions?
If I had enough fingers, I think it was 6 yes and 1 no.
You're correct.
That's what I got.
Okay. Well, the next thing is to present it at town meeting and see where it goes, and that's coming up. So be ready.
All right. Well, thank you very much all. And the Park Commission is meeting next Wednesday night to continue discussion about this through a Zoom meeting. So anyone that would like to attend that Zoom meeting is more than welcome to. So thank you.
Yes.
Ed, what's the deadline for the article?
Tomorrow at noon.
Okay, so you're all aware of that, right?
Yes, I'm aware of it.
Okay.
I have some others to take down, so
Okay.
I will be writing and then driving them down before noon. Okay, what's next?
Oh, there was one comment I wanted to make, if you don't mind.
Yes.
First, I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to tell Bob that I'm actually working on making those bathrooms that you're talking about a little better. We're getting some hand dryers in there, so slowly but surely they'll get better.
I need to talk to you about those.
Okay, I need to talk to Ed about getting the hair, but I'm working on it. We're all working on it.
You need to talk to me
We'll
about
get them,
what
but
you
we might
really
have to get
need.
some different ones.
Okay, sorry to interrupt your meeting.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Well, good night, all.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Now I've got to find my agenda again.
Bathrooms.
Yeah, paint the fucking walls and
Okay. Now we have another kind of interesting project that has been turned in. And I guess maybe we just ought to ask Cindy to talk about it.
Can I share screen, Virginia?
Yeah, if you've got,
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
I did it. Can
Okay.
everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, great. So this is a request for funds from CPC. And Virginia can discuss the sort of administrative aspect of this, but I'm just going to give you the broad request for this project. Right now, the town owns land going off the end of Wolcott Road up as the elevation increases, going towards, but not at, the top of Pomeroy Mountain. The land currently owned by the town is renamed Great Mountain Path. And the chairperson of the Conservation Commission and the Conservation Commission in its entirety, as I understand it, would like to see the acquisition of the abutting acreage, which is known to be 40 acres, which is map 12, parcel 10 on our assessor's map. And we are of the hope that this will be for sale. What we need is money for the official appraisal of $1,500, and we need money, $500, to send a bona fide offer and a down payment. If this is accepted, then the $500 would go towards the purchase of the property, and then the $1,500 would go towards the appraisal. If it isn't accepted, and this is a little bit of the confusing part for me, we may not have to expend any of it. I have gone forth and had attempted communications with the owners. I had 2 phone calls with them greater than a year ago, where my understanding was that they are interested in selling. The second phone call left me with the hopeful position that they had a few things to deal with within the family, and once that was resolved, they'd be getting back to us. I sent a follow-up email, and again, it was still hopeful. I've sent subsequent emails that have not been responded to. Last week, I sent a letter. I did not send it return receipt requested or certified mail. I felt that was a little too aggressive, but I did say that this was, that we were going to go forward with this. Would you please contact me if there was any extenuating circumstances that I should understand? and I had no response. And I offered my email address and my cell phone number, and I've had no response back. So I really couldn't tell you for sure what they hope to do with this land. It is landlocked. There is no public road access to this. It is right next to the very beautiful Great Mountain Path, which has been worked on this recent summer by the Student Conservation Commission. I walked up there a week ago. It is absolutely gorgeous up there. It really is. I think the Student Conservation Commission did a beautiful job. And one of the foresters actually used his oxen to do the work up there, and included taking down a super large trunk of a tree, splitting it longitudinally, opening it like a sandwich, and laying it across wetlands. It's really beautiful. And it's all now I'm talking about the actual Conservation Commission land, the town land. It's all very well blazed and very well marked. It's the land next to it that we hope to acquire. At this point, maybe Virginia, you should explain what you're recommending that we do and to proceed with the administrative aspect of this.
Yeah, I'll explain that, and then I do have Randall's questions that I will give to Cindy so that she can answer some of them or think about some of them. We cannot purchase, the town cannot purchase land without it being appraised. We have in the past, community preservation has used their administrative operating funds to do appraisals. We usually don't get anything out of it except the appraisal, even if the purchase doesn't come. That would be the $1,500. It seems to me this money can come out of our administrative funds, which we've not used. Every year we put so much money aside for things like appraisals, and we haven't used these in a long time. They go back in the next year and we get them again, and we haven't used them. So I can't see going to the town meeting with this. These two are things we can do with our administrative monies. Just have to have the okay of the committee. And that is what I am proposing. And as Cindy, when she finds this out, if they're continuing to be interested, then I can, if you've approved these, then we can go ahead and she can take care of these things. Now, are there any questions about that?
Let me add one thing. A couple of realtors that are on the Open Space Committee have, a professional, unofficial assessment that this is probably approximately $1,000 an acre. So when we assume, we aren't sure, we assume that the appraisal will come in at somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000. So then if that was to be the case, and if we're interested in selling, and then we would be going to town meeting for the full acquisition. And that would have to be a contingency in the offer, that it would be contingent on being approved at town meeting.
Yeah. So I'm proposing that we go ahead this way, and when Cindy finds out what's going on, we can then move with the appraisal and then the offer.
I just want to add, this is Megan. If anyone wants to look at any surveyor maps, I actually have copies of the property, so I could pull those up if anyone had questions.
Could you email those, a copy to me, Megan?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well,
I have two questions, actually. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. The first one is, I know that you have to cross property in order to get to our current town land. Will this allow us to not do that?
I can clarify that if you can't, Cindy.
Go ahead, Megan. Go ahead.
So our current town property is actually located on and off of the abandoned town road, which is still technically, I believe, town property. There is a private property that is transected by that road. And I know that because not a lot of people were using it, that private landowner kind of just, was very comfortable. So I think it sort of kind of became like an unused area that might have been considered private property, but I don't believe it is. I believe it is still a town property and town road. I know we had spoken to Randall about putting some additional gravel on the road itself, and there was no discussion of whether we would have to get permission to do that. The other portion is that the access to the property through that town road is really the only access. So when we go to the property, like I went up and I did the blazing for the trail, I actually had to park and block the town road because we don't park on the private landowner's property. So purchasing this additional property would allow us to get not only up the mountain, but acquire what's been used as a logging landing, which is a area that's fairly flat and clear, and would be able to be used for a parking spot for a few cars who, for anyone who wanted to come and access the property. It would be much more. I'm sorry?
Last time I went on the property, I basically drove up and was going to drop off the people I was with. And I had parked, Marla and I and one of the previous Conservation Commission members had previously gone up there with permission from the landowner and parked. And the second time I went up there, I was basically told, you can't park there, go back and park on Walcott. So I'm just wondering, does the purchase of this property allow something different to happen, or are people still going to have to park along Walcott in order to access town property, either the new one or the existing one?
As far as I know, so I'm assuming that you parked kind of where the road becomes very rough and is washed out, and you parked off to the side. That is private property. So the area that would be being acquired would be a property that would allow for additional parking that isn't blocking the road.
So you would be able to drive up and the private property would be on the right. You would go up and
the left
bridge and you'd be able to park somewhere, so you wouldn't have to park further down Walcott and walk through the person's property.
Yes.
Okay. The other question I had is, I can see the $500 for the appraisal, but it seems to me that a down payment on land isn't technically administrative. It would seem like it's open space. Is that other people's feeling about that, or is it just trying to allow it to not go to town meeting?
No, it's a part of the things that would have to be done before we could go to town meeting. Part of the getting ready. And we've never used that funds that way but we have done appraisals. But I don't see why that's a part of obtaining the ability to take that to town meeting. And I know a lot of other towns use funds that way.
Yeah, but I just feel like open space allows you to get the town's input on something. But if we're going to be using administrative and not going to town to actually put a down payment down, that's making a commitment. It's without the will of the voters.
Well, wait a minute. let's be clear about this. First of all, the appraisal is not 500, that's 1,500.
Okay.
That's,
yeah,
okay, clarify that.
Yeah.
Secondly, the 500 would not even be used permanently. It's sort of borrowed from the administrative fund in order to move forward on the process of putting down the offer. If the offer is accepted, then we go to town meeting for the full price, and the $500 is returned to the administrative fund. Okay? It's just kind of in a bar. It really is kind of classically fills, in my opinion, the definition of administrative. It's just moving along the process. If the offer is not accepted, if the sellers are not interested, the 500 is never used. It's sent. It's never used. It's not. If they cash the check, that's as good as saying you want to accept the offer. If they don't cash the check, then there's no expenditure.
So the $500 for the down payment doesn't commit us to purchase the property, and if we make a down payment and the townspeople don't support the price of the actual land, then we would lose $500, right?
That's right. That would have to be built into the contingency. So if they would have to understand that if they are interested in selling to us, and we'll have to probably get some kind of a legal review on how we write this. But if they're interested in selling to us, then they have to understand that 500 applies to the purchase price, and that 500 goes back into the administrative fund of CPC. But then we have to pass at town meeting the full purchase price, and then to make the sale go forward. Ed, am I making sense, or would you say this any differently?
I'd probably get a legal opinion on that. Of why can't we just say we're making an offer of X amount of dollars contingent on town meeting vote without a deposit?
But I will say that I've been advised by a member of the Open Space Committee who's a realtor that you really have to put a down payment down. You have to put a deposit down. It's almost like this is a serious offer. Because, we did this before with the same buyer and they didn't even respond to it. Once you put an offer down, she's given us a standard form to utilize. This is April, who's one of our, members of our, it was up on the, April West. She says you really need to put money down on an offer to make it a formal offer.
Okay, yeah, we're a municipal government which operates under municipal rules and regulations. So I would have to look into that.
And Cindy, the current property is not on the market, and there hasn't been an agreement by the seller to actually sell the property. So that's not concerning at all to you?
Well, it's concerning in that they might decline it. That's my biggest concern, that they might, say, no, we're not going to sell. It's not on the market.
Mm-hmm.
It is concerning. However, we're going nowhere if we don't at least move this a little bit further along in process. And the way to do it, the next step, is to get an appraisal and make an offer. And what we risk is that they decline it. And then we're down to 1,500.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, you're comfortable with the idea that $500 would go towards the administrative piece would be a down payment? I just don't want the townspeople to feel that we've used administrative money, a small committee here have used administrative money to purchase land, and then they'll see it as similar to what we just talked about Park. We got $100,000, so therefore we're sort of forced to move forward. I really do think the townspeople should vote. I just feel uncomfortable with the administrative funds going towards land purchase.
But it is and it isn't. If they decline, it never was.
Mm-hmm.
If they accept, the amount that we will ask the town people for is whatever else plus the 500. And so say that it's 40,000 and they have gotten 500 of that. Well, we're going to go to the town and we're going to say the purchase price is 40,000. We got, community preservation gets the 500 back because that doesn't have to be paid twice.
That's
So,
right.
and with that, is the path of the money.
Okay.
I'm not worried.
Okay.
Maybe this sounds like I'm not being transparent too, but the townspeople will only know that they're paying 40,000. They won't know about the appraisal, and they won't know about this $500 that seems to wander around. And if they ask, yes. If they're more likely to ask what the appraisal was.
Well, the proper way to do that would be if it was 40,000, it could be the warrant could be worded to say 35,500 for the purchase of the property and $500 to repay the CPC administrative fund for a down payment.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. I guess I'm not worried because I think probably I know other towns and cities have done this.
Well, I'm more comfortable with what Bob just said. You know, this is a surcharge on people's taxes. So
Right.
whether they know or don't know, I think they have the right to know.
Yes, they have the right to know, but it's not something I think anyone's likely to question. The appraisal might be. Why are you doing the appraisal and not, the owners getting it appraised so that they can set a price? I know we got that question before when we had an appraisal.
Well, isn't it true that whenever the town purchases property, an appraisal has to be sought after?
That is true.
Well, you have to have some basis for what you're offering.
Right.
I mean, the first step is, what is it assessed at? That's a value.
Right.
And if, depending on what that is, if you don't think that is going to be, that's a fair assessment, then yes, then you'd have to go out and get a appraisal of that. And then the owner would have the right to look at that and say, well, maybe I'm willing to sell, but I think that's low. They would have the right to get their own appraisal that they would pay for.
Right.
And say, okay, here's what the appraisal I got says we'll sell for that. And depending on how far the two are apart, you can actually step into a third appraisal, which is split in the cost by the two parties.
Right.
Is this land currently landlocked?
Yes. Right, Megan? Would you view that at landlocked? This is a unused town road, right? Unmaintained road.
It's abandoned, I believe. The road's been abandoned.
Yeah.
So it is actually maintained up to a point. I guess it is plowed, I guess, to the beginning of the mountain. But yes, otherwise that would be, it's not landlocked entirely because the old road does run through it. I have been told, I don't have a vehicle that would go all the way down, but I've been told that it should run through and connect towards Westhampton. But with the exception of that road, it would otherwise be landlocked.
Megan, I'm not sure, you say it's being plowed. I'm not sure the town is doing it. I would guess, my opinion would be that it's being done privately.
I think that's true, that any plowing has occurred by the landowner of the lower side, right at the very end of Wolcott. I
Right.
think he plows his property, but I don't think town, I mean, we can ask Randall. I don't
I'm
think,
not sure.
yeah, and I think that what you're talking about is a really old road that is no longer being utilized for any public purpose. And it does go all the way to Westhampton, but it is not publicly utilized by either at the Westhampton end nor the Southampton end.
I do know several hunters that have actually told me that they've gone up there. That's why I know that the road goes to Westhampton.
Yeah, and I've walked it many times, and I know exactly what you mean, but it isn't a town road. Yeah.
No, I know you wouldn't be able to drive through with a normal car by any means. So
I feel like this, I do support this. I think that it checks off a lot of the boxes in terms of I'm sure it's a wildlife corridor, and it's contiguous with existing property that we own. I also know that there is some opposition to this by an abutter, if I'm not mistaken. So my preference would just be that I think that people do care about where the money comes from. People ask for the balance on the accounts. There's a lot of competition for open space lands. There are some people that think we just buy everything that goes on the market. I think that, to me, I think it's important that we just specify. I would want to know that the money was coming from open space and that it was decided by the voters and not just this committee. Any purchase of land. We had people that came and wanted to reduce the surcharge to 1% not that long ago. So anyway, to me, I support it, but I just want to make sure that we're transparent about how the money is being decided and what pot it comes out of.
There will not be any purchase money coming out of.
For the down payment.
But that will.
Right.
That will come back.
Right. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, that's.
So if we put this in the form of a motion, if I may do so now, Virginia?
Yes.
Then the motion would read that we appropriate $1,500 from the CPC administrative account for appraisal of this property, and an additional $500 from the CPC administrative account for a down payment to be repaid to the administrative account if the property is indeed purchased.
Or not purchased.
Or not purchased. Either way, it should come back.
Okay, yes. To be repaid to the administrative account at a later date.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Well, then we need to vote.
Just a question. If the down payment is put in escrow and the townspeople vote against purchasing the property, will the landowner be able to keep the deposit money? Because in that case, that might not actually come back.
That would be, and I'll need the assistance of a legal opinion here, that will have to be the contingency of the offer. It has to be clear that the offer is made contingent on the town of Southampton approving at town meeting the purchase price. And if the town meeting doesn't approve the purchase price, the sale cannot go through.
Well, I think the question was, if it gets to town meeting and doesn't go through, will we get it back from the?
Yeah, I guess that's my question. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of a down payment?
So Ed, do you think that's reasonable that we could create an offer that says this offer is made based on affirmation at town meeting for the purchase price, and if it fails, the return of the offer, return of the down payment?
Yeah, we can look into that and see if we can do it that way. Absolutely.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Any other?
You haven't got a second?
I seconded it, Bob.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I'm looking at Megan's face and I don't know if she has more questions. I don't know.
No, I used to be in real estate. And so I guess I'm just kind of confused about whether or not the deposit would even be, whether there's like a point to having a deposit if the offer is written as such that the deposit would come back. But that really isn't, I don't have any further questions, so.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor, say aye with your name.
Kwasinski, aye.
Aye.
Joseph, aye.
Brown eye.
Got some more people out there.
A couple of times, two people spoke at once. I think everybody answered.
Oh yeah, did you get me and Cindy?
Yeah. Okay. Any negative votes? Anyone saying nay? Okay, I will say yes, so. Okay. Cindy, are you set?
I guess so. It will not be able to go on this warrant because we cannot get everything together for noon tomorrow, I don't believe. So we need to get the appraisal next. So,
You go for the appraisal.
yeah.
And then when you get that back, we can go in and you can go in and get the 500.
Right. I'm assuming, because I've spoken to an appraiser before, and Megan, if you want to, link in or chime in on this, that we don't have, bona fide permission to walk on this land to do the appraisal. So they'll have to walk around it. They'll have to go onto the town-owned land and look at maps and do it that way. That's the only way, unless we walk on the land without permission to do the appraisal.
Yeah, you can't really walk on private property
Right.
yeah.
And maybe I will again request a permission from the current owners. And like I said, they haven't answered me, several months. I hope everything is well. They did just sell other property in the town of Southampton, which I thought was the main thing they had to do. Was they sold the house of the man who lived in the town, and that went through a couple months ago. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I have to go to planning board, so I have to excuse myself. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
Now, let me see what else is on my agenda. Sierra?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what date the next open meeting is?
I do indeed. The housing production plan meeting you're referring to?
Yes.
It is going to be on November 18th at 6:30 p.m. It's going to be virtual again. We'll send things out in all the same ways we did before. So I'll email you the flyer and everything. And yeah, we're going to be talking about strategies for developing affordable housing.
Excellent. So that's the November 18th.
Mm-hmm. And I hope you can all come and tell your friends too. I'll send an email that's closer to the dates because I don't want to get it out too early and have people forget. But if you wouldn't mind forwarding whatever I send you to anyone that you can, that would be super helpful because we really want lots of participation.
And it was fun before.
Yeah, the sticky notes. Yeah, it was good.
I think they got some good beginning of how people feel in town and good. The other thing I've got on here is at one of the select board meetings, when I made my report, one of the members asked about the exemption that we give, the 100,000, not the surcharge doesn't go on the first $100,000 of your, the assessment of your home. And you only pay the surcharge after the first 100,000. And it didn't sound like a horribly bad idea. It almost sounded like one that was worth really looking into. So when I went to check at the Community Preservation Coalition, unfortunately, the state law states the 100,000. And they are, and as the man steward at the coalition said, we weren't the first to ask. And he said, I don't think you're going to be the last. He said, we're getting a lot of interest in raising that. It would take, however, an act of the legislature of our state. So they are approaching some of the probably more likely people, the legislative people, and to see if they can get it into the next session. And then whether it would be 200,000 or, 1,500 or what, not 1,000, 150,000 or something, I don't know. But they are definitely getting a big push on that. The thing that surprised me, however, and I was really surprised about this, there are 187 cities and towns that are in, and at least 1/10 or 10% of those 187 don't give any exemption. You pay on everything. So that's where that is. I didn't think it was a bad idea because the reasoning is kind of that people have had their homes for a long time, and older people especially. The house has gone way up in its assessment. I'd hate to tell you how much mine's gone up in the appraisal or assessment area. So, it's kind of on hold, wait and see. If it does happen and it goes before the legislature, we can have a discussion and maybe try to find out how it would impact us and go from there.
It's an interesting concept. I've done a little bit of research on it. It's pretty difficult. And the whole thinking is that even in Southampton, that homes are being appraised at a higher level, but also being sold at a higher level. But if you go and look at the appraisals, and without adding them all up and taking an average, my educated guess would be that perhaps the average house in Southampton is being appraised at about $300,000, and very few, as of now anyway, of the homes are up above $500,000 and to the $600,000 level. So when you think about the concept, if you're 1/3 of your appraisal, if you're in the $300,000 range, is being exempted. But if you're in the $600,000 range, it's 1/6, whatever that percentage is. So it's something to be considered, but it's basically out of our hands until the state is willing to act on that sort of thing. I don't think that perhaps we've reached the level yet in Southampton anyway that the majority of our homes are over $300,000. I could be somewhat wrong about that, but I also spoke to the assessor's office today without revealing my figure. And it was funny that they came up with the same average that I did off the top of our heads. So that's for future consideration, but it is to be considered.
Yeah, no, we would, if it gets into the legislature, then I think we should look into how it might affect the people in Southampton, but also our funding for community preservation. And then discuss this with your legislators and how you feel after that. But it was kind of interesting that when it was brought up and I looked into it, it was 1/10 didn't have any exemption. And they were not necessarily towns where you would think that high-priced homes or low-priced homes. It was kind of an average, across the board, different types, diversity, different places in the state, etc. But I just wanted you to know that. We don't know what's going to be happening. Okay, is there any other thing that needs to come before us? If not, do I hear?
Megan, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think the way to, instead of having to vote to do this one by one, if you're ready to adjourn, say goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.